From the WGBH newsroom in Boston, I'm Adam Reilly, and you're watching, pay no attention to the noise over there, you're watching another installment of The Scrum, our ongoing multimedia conversation about politics in Boston and around Massachusetts. I'm joined today by WGBH political analyst Peter Kadzis and WGBH political analyst and Boston Magazine contributing editor David Bernstein. Guys, thanks for being here. So the final mayoral election is now 6 weeks away. We actually haven't talked since Marty Walsh and John Connolly locked up spots in the final. And I want to chat a little bit right now about a narrative that's been taking shape since they won. We saw it on the front page of the Herald today in a column by Reverend Eugene Rivers, arguing that this was a big missed opportunity for Boston's communities of color, that they had a chance to vote in big numbers and perhaps put a candidate of color into the final, and that they failed, and that this is, cause for disappointment. Do you buy that argument?
No, I don't. I think that there was a great opportunity, and that that opportunity would have been fulfilled had a strong candidate come out of, a black or Hispanic candidate come out and run a good campaign and convince people to vote for him. It didn't happen. You had several good candidates, none of whom really were able to put all of the pieces together. Charlotte Golorici being the one who sort of had the initial momentum of a lot of support, but she couldn't. Quite frankly, the numbers look like she wasn't able to convince enough white voters, including women, to vote for her in any kind of numbers. So I don't think it was that she lost votes to Yancey and Barros or anything. I think it was that there wasn't a strong enough candidate.
You also crunched some numbers in some wards, I believe.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't remember if you got down to the precinct level, showing that a lot of African American voters and Latino voters probably voted for white candidates as well. That it wasn't just splitting among.
It was a mix, and again, what we've seen in past elections is that there's that tendency to it's not a monolithic group by any means, and they will split up their votes in a number of different ways, unless there is a strong candidate, a Deval Patrick or someone like that, an Andrea Cabral when she ran for sheriff, and then they will vote. It wasn't that they didn't turn out. They turned out, as they do in better than they often do relative to other precincts.
Well, it wasn't one candidate to galvanize.
Yeah, I think David's directionally correct.
That sounds provisional.
No. My thoughts are a little different, but they head in the same direction as him. First of all, I think Gene Rivers, who's always provocative and often sensible, is just engaging in this sort of reverie of masochistic victimhood with this Herald piece. I mean, the way I look at it is Golorici's campaign got off to a slow start, and she finished strong. I mean, she beat the sitting district attorney.
That's a good point.
I think that she salvaged the dignity of her supporters, and the city is better off for having her run. For my standards, the single most exciting thing to come out of this campaign was the emergence of John Barros, who personally I knew about and knew had a solid reputation, but watching him on the campaign trail, for me, it was exciting and a real education. I think all of this is too little too late. I think the focus here should be on what's moving ahead.
Well, I'm glad that you provided that transition that was seamless. Peter, what happens now? What do Walsh and John Connolly, what do they do to try to court votes in heavily African American, Latino, Cape Verdean, Asian neighborhoods? And does one of them have an advantage? I think that's maybe my biggest question. Is one of them going to be stronger with non-white voters than the other?
Well, I think that's going to be determined over time. I think that John Connolly has made more inroads with both minority voters and what I would call sort of new Boston, sort of the young professionals. Both of those sets tend to vote more heavily in the final election than in the preliminary, and both sets, to the degree that they voted in the preliminary, tended to support candidates who are now out, so their votes are more up for grabs. Marty Walsh certainly has a lot of minorities in Dorchester who support him, and he gets votes there and elsewhere. And he certainly has sort of this working class narrative that resonates. But John Connolly has been working, and getting votes in communities of color, and very pointedly held his election night rally. Party in Roxbury,
Hibernian Hall,
Dudley Square.
I mean, my advice to them, I don't know what they should do for sure. I know how I'd go about it. There are, I believe, something like 200 predominantly black churches in Boston. I'd try to visit as many of those churches as possible, just as a sounding board. And I would just try to go to the biggest of those churches, talk to the parishioners, and find out what's on your mind. What do you care about? What do you worry about? And that would be my limited advice to them.
Is it fair to say that among all the candidates in this race, whether they were white, black, Latino, Cape Verdean, that there's general unanimity about issues involving race, that there are racial disparities in Boston, whether they're economic disparities, public safety disparities, educational disparities that are concerning and need to be addressed? That was my sense.
Well, to me, there are two real obvious issues, facts here. One is that while crime is down in the city of Boston as a whole, it's not down, it's vibrant, it's thriving in parts of Roxbury, Mattapan, Dorchester, Jamaica Plain, the South End, and that as a result, who the next police commissioner is an issue of vital importance. And the second is the schools, where, I'm a Boston public school parent, but I'm decidedly in the minority. Most of the kids are children of color in there, and who the next superintendent is.
Yeah.
Now, the question here is, for all the people playing identity politics, what's more important, to have a black superintendent of schools or to have a good superintendent of schools? I'm trying to be purposely provocative there, and I was provocative at just the right moment, too.
Just the right moment. David Bernstein, Peter Kadzis, thank you as always for being here and scrumming with me. Thank you for watching the Scrum. I'm Adam Reilly from WGBH News. We'll be back again next week.